Good morning. So we are on Kuf Yud Beis Amud Beis 112b. Before we go to the Gemara, just going to comment on what we learned yesterday. We learned about staying away from an ox, right? If it's an ox that doesn't have a reputation for doing any harm, then stay 50 amot away. And if it's an ox that's a muad, has a reputation for causing harm, then as far as you possibly can be, right? And the Gemara said something that a person sees an ox in the head in the trough, in the, what's it called?
Trough.
The trough, run up a ladder to a roof and take the ladder away because it's so dangerous. Now I noted that there was a little star there, a little aleph there indicating that it was in halacha. Right? I think I mentioned that. Right, because we're going through this, we're trying to remember which parts are in the halacha, which parts aren't.
We didn't come across that one.
Not in the Shulchan Aruch that we learned, right? So we didn't see that. So we looked it up. I'm just going to read the relevant section. It's in the laws of, it's broken. It's in the laws of davening. It's in chapter 104. I have it on my screen. I'm just going to read it in English. And it's the laws of, quote, one may not make an interruption during Shemona Esrei. So during the Amidah, not interrupting. And it discusses the levels of danger that a person might be in that would allow him to make an interruption and what kind of interruption. Okay. So, for example, when it comes, this is relevant to the next point, which is when it comes to, let's say, a snake going up his ankle. So he may not stop, he may not interrupt verbally, but he can move around to get away from it.
Okay.
As long as he's not making a verbal interruption.
The qualifier is only if it's a venomous snake.
Right. Then if it's a venomous snake, if it's a right, it gets into the venomous versus not venomous. But even so, he should don't walk away without using words, unless it's so dangerous that it's a situation where he knows it's a real problem. Then he can use words as well, like calling a friend, "Please take it off me," something like that. Okay, so in that context, it reads, Halacha 3 of chapter 104. This is the Alter Rebbe Shulchan Aruch. If a person sees an ox approaching him, he should make an interruption during his davening. Presumably, the interruption is to move away, not necessarily speak, because one should distance himself 50 cubits from. Here's the reason why a person should make an interruption, because one should distance himself from 50 cubits from an ox that is not known to gore, and one should move out of sight of an ox that is known to gore. That would be from our Gemara. Right? If there is an accepted presumption, the ox in a particular place are not harmful, they're domesticated, one may not interrupt his recitation from an esrei unless he sees an ox that caused harm once before. Follow?
I'm just confused a bit. You said that this is from the Shulchan Aruch, but not the Alter Rebbe's.
It is the Alter Shulchan Aruch, yes.
Oh, so but didn't we read all the halachas pertaining to that?
This is a different chapter.
Oh, again, there's many chapters on this topic.
No, this is a chapter about not interrupting Shemona Esrei.
Oh, right.
Sorry. And this is where it happens to bring up the idea of staying away from an ox. Right. So what's interesting is that in the section where it talks about taking care of yourself, it doesn't say, hey, you got to stay away from an ox 50 feet, 50 amos, and if the ox has a reputation, stay away from it as far as I can see. But when it comes to Shemona Esrei, he does bring up the law.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
Sorry.
The law actually comes from the Gemara in Brachas. That you're supposed to you're allowed to interrupt your davening to stay away from an ox. But then this idea that because you have to have 50 feet away from a regular ox and out of sight from an ox that has a reputation, that comes from our Gemara, from psachim. Combining these two things to make it into halacha, right? Now, the addition here is, which is an interesting one, which is that if in this locale, oxen do not gore, they've been domesticated, then you don't have to interrupt at all. You can't interrupt.
Right.
Well, right, because locally the oxen are all fine. Right. Sorry? Not because it's a calm ox, because locally no oxen damage. Meaning you don't know every ox in town, but if you know we're living in a farm town and the oxen are all domesticated and people walk around with their carts pulling an ox, you know it's not going to gore you.
Right.
So then you daven, even if you don't know that particular ox. Right. Unless you happen to know that particular ox once hit someone, then you can stop your davening to move away. Right? Which qualifies further our Gemara from yesterday, which the rule that you have to stay away from an ox 50 feet or stay away out of sight is not universal. It's in a place where you don't know the nature of the oxen here. But if you're in a location where you know the nature of the oxen and they're not going to do anything, there's no reason to run away from them. Because I was curious about this, because the Gemara says stay away from an ox 50 feet or out of sight from an ox that once gored. I mean, in the old days, there were oxen walking down the street alongside humans all the time, especially if they were work oxen. So now we have the answer. If you're in a town where the oxen are domesticated, no problem. You don't know the nature of oxen locally, then the halacha applies to stay away from it. Yeah, clear?
Yeah.
Okay, Robert, you want to say something?
No, clear.
Yeah,
How can
okay,
you
sure.
tell? I mean, are they branded in a certain way? Muad not like the oxen
Right, so you
themselves,
have to know that particular ox.
personally.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, I assume, if an ox has a certain reputation, it hits someone 3 times, then people would know, oh, Yankel's ox does that.
Oh, okay. Right.
I assume people in town would know
They
that.
don't roam free, you're saying they're always with their owners.
I don't know. Even if they do roam free, look, like think of locally here. I look at the dogs, I know whose dog it is.
Right.
I don't know their names, they're not branded, but they're
Right.
walking down the street all the time, so I know who they belong to.
Mm.
So I imagine it's very similar back in the old day with your oxen, horses, and donkeys.
Yeah, they probably had names for these particular
Yeah, people knew who they were, I assume.
animals.
Not part of our world because we have cars and in plumbing, but it was a thing back in the day, right? It was a regular part of life. Okay, that was regard to that. Okay, now to our Gemara. The line begins with the word Mishar. It's about the third from the top of the page. It's the third to last word, and it says Tana Mishmei Rab Meir. You see it there? A third from the top. A third from the top.
Top here?
Yeah, that would be the top. So a third from the top. Like go down a third from the top.
Yeah,
The line begins with the word Mishar, and then it's Tana Mishmei Rab Meir.
Yeah, Tana Rabbi.
Tana Mishmei Rab Meir.
Oh.
Actually, a little further down.
Tana Mishmei Rabbi.
So 2 lines down from below that. Sorry, Amarav. Yeah, that was the statement of Rameir, which said that you should run up to the top of a tree of a roof and take away the ladder if you see an ox eating. Now the next statement is Amarav. Yes, it's 2 lines down. And Rav said, Nizia, the whisper, the Torah of an ox is hain. So what does this mean, the whisper of the ox? And the same thing, we're about to give whispers for other animals. So what is it talking about? So, I forgot, I want to look at the translation of this. So the Rashi says that the word Nizihah means whisper is like a spiritual incantation. We had this before when you meet negative spiritual energy, you like say words that respond to it. So here it's Rashi understands it to mean the Gemara is giving us what words to use to like spiritually scare off an animal. And Rashbam says, no, it's more like just the way in which you communicate to animals. Like today, you would say like, I don't know, giddy up to horse, or actually the proper way to do it is to make kissing sounds, which informs the horse, right?
Yeah. So this hain isn't like a moo. Let's say.
No, it's how the human responds.
It's how the human.
That's correct.
Right.
So, but either it's like a spiritual whisper, like you're whispering the spiritual message to communicate spiritually to the ox not to bother you, or it's just the way you talk to a dog. You say the way you talk to an ox, you say hain, and then it either comes to you or it goes away from you, or you are pushing it along to plow your field. It's the language of communication. That's how Rashbam puts it.
Okay.
As opposed to like a spiritual thing.
Right.
Or, as we've been suggesting, both. The spiritual are stacked upon the physical. So the physical reality of how you communicate to animals mirrors the way you would spiritually, maybe. Okay, so therefore, Nizia, this whisper for the Torah for the ox is hain. Hain, that's how you talk to an ox. Nizia the Aryeh, the way you whisper to a lion, is zeh. Nizia the Gamla, the way you whisper to a camel, is da. Nizia the Arba, the whisper for, I want to look this up again, I forgot. It was, I'm pretty sure it's a horse. Well, give me a second, I'm going to be certain. Just give me half a second. Pull it up the screen here.
It's so funny, this Gemara, you really can be talking about anything at any point.
Yep, that's right. I think that's it. I actually went this morning to look it up and I completely forgot, you know. I'm pretty sure it's horse. No, now I remember, yes. Arba is the people who row boats.
Oh,
Yeah. So in other words, you're communicating to the what happened to my Gemara here?
rowers.
You're communicating to the oars to get them to move along.
Mm.
So I guess in modern times that would be what is it, heave ho?
Heed. Yeah.
Yeah. And that is as follows. Here's the words you use to communicate with them, says Rav. Helini, or hey, or hila, or hiluk, or hulia. I guess that would be like if you're like the taskmaster and you're screaming at the oar people, you want to get them to go in a rhythm. You'd be saying something to the effect of, where did I just go? Lost place.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, you'd be saying something like, Helini, hiya, hila, something like that, getting them to move along.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So this phrase seems to actually support Rashbam's position.
Yeah.
Because this sounds more like just a human, like unless Rashi would say that these are the words you would say to spiritually communicate with like a ship that's coming to attack you. Right? Because that's how Rashi learned it. That Neziyah means like a lachash, a incantation to communicate to the ox not to hurt you. Whereas Rashbam says it just means how you talk to animals, like what sound you make for them to understand you. And this last one where it talks about getting a boat to row, it's humans, that sounds like how you talk to them to get them to follow your instructions, like heave ho type thing.
Right.
Unless Rashi's saying that if you see like a rowboat coming towards you and it's about to attack you, you say one of these things. So I don't know, but this is the Gemara. Okay.
Rashi's coming under a lot of shade.
Chas v'shalom, things.
Last night, tonight.
No, we don't put Rashi in the shade. We put Rashi's the text under question, not Rashi himself. God forbid.
Okay.
And Chas v'shalom. Rashi is one of the great teachers of all of Torah. Okay, Omar Abaye said. Now here's an interesting thing. The Gemara is now going to list 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 things that are a spiritual negative energy that would bring one to have leprosy, to have like a white skin discoloration. And we'll remember some of them are mentioned in the Alter Shulchan Aruch, some are not. And it's a curiosity. It's in the same list. And yet some are in the Shulchan Aruch, some are not. So let's see. Amar Abaye said, the following items have an issue. Or leather. The Gemara is going to explain and qualify what all these are. Or leather, dug, a fish, kois chamin, hot water, beitzim, eggs, vikinim, levanim, and white lice. All these 5, kulun koshin l'davar acher. They're all present the problem for that other thing, namely skin discoloration. Okay, so now let's go through each of these 5 things and explain when and how they become a problem. Or item number 1 was leather. Says the Gemara, mandagani amishcha ditzala, one who sleeps on a not fully processed hide. That I don't remember we mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch. Does anybody remember that? Not to sleep in not to sleep in a hide that's not fully produced. Remember such a thing? I don't.
I have a vague thing about it, but
Not the Shulchan Aruch?
I don't know from where. I'm sorry, I don't know.
Sorry?
If there was a woman that was on it, but that's something else.
What do you mean?
There's a woman that was on a mattress. You can't sleep on that. Something. No, or a wife or
Not that we had before, not to sit on the Aramean's bed. Talk about that one.
Before that, in the halacha. Not to go into a house that I don't know.
Not to startle someone? I don't remember. Remember something?
I maybe.
Yeah, if it comes back to you, tell me.
Yeshua, do you remember?
Something about going on a mattress with where a woman was. Do you remember this? Something like that, Yeshua?
No, just yesterday we mentioned about sitting
the
on an
Armenian one,
Armenian's bed.
Right.
But
I think Mary's thinking of something else.
Okay.
Okay,
Yeah,
so
no.
the dog, the fish. It's a certain fish called shibuta, the Yom Nisan in the season of the spring and the Nisan season. Okay, this I could explain why it wasn't in the Shulchan Aruch, because you don't know what the Shibuta fish is. Right? But the leather thing, maybe the reason why the leather thing is not mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch is because not so common. Certainly not in, like, why would anybody end up sleeping in hide that was unproduced, unless you happen to be someone who's in the hide business and you fell asleep on your not fully produced hide, right? So I don't know, maybe that's why it's not in the Shulchan Aruch, meaning the Shulchan Aruch is only bringing practical things. Anyway, item number 3 was kois, was a cup. That was a problem. So the Gemara explains, sheyurde kisa dahandasa, the harnasa. It's the leftovers of that kisa the harnasa we had before as a fried fish. That was the problem. No, I don't remember this being mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch. Anybody? I don't think so. Chamin,
No, I don't.
when so it's actually 6 things. It's fish, it's leather, unprocessed hide, sleeping on unprocessed hide, dog, that special kind of fish, kois, a cup, that's specifically speaking about kisa the handasa, leftovers from the fried fish, and chamin is number 4, the hot water. I actually combined before kois, chamin, hot water, but it's not. It's 2 separate things. Kois is one, chamin is another. Yeah? So chamin, the hot, is specifically chamimi de chamimis, hot, extremely hot water, mishadru alai, that he pours on him consistently pouring extremely hot water on oneself, no good. Also, I don't remember this being mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch. Anyone?
No, I don't mention. No.
The next 2 are mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch. Beitzim, the issue with eggs that Abaye was referring to, is mander midrich aklipas, one who steps on eggshells. This was mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch. Remember? Stepping on eggshells invites skin discoloration. That was mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch. The other 4 before were not. And the next one's also mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch. The last on Abaye's list is kinim levanim, white lice. Says the Gemara, man mechaver lavushe, one who puts on an article of clothing, v'lo notele tamne yoma v'hadar lavoshle. One who washes his clothing, white clothing, but doesn't wait 8 days to put it on. Remember we had that in the Shulchan Aruch?
Yes.
And hanech kinin, that if you put it on within 8 days from it being washed, that invites these lice, the kosher davar acher, and they are a problem because they invite this other issue. They invite leprosy. This is the end of the Abaye statement. A list of stuff not to do because they all invite davar acher. They invite skin discoloration, sleeping in unfinished hide, leftover. She put the fish in the springtime, leftover from the fried fish, extremely hot water being poured on oneself consistently, walking on eggshells, and wearing an article of clothing that hasn't been left, wearing an article of clothing that has been washed within the last 8 days, which has in it this lice. All of these things are spiritually detrimental, and that they invite skin discoloration. Now, this list, my memory serves me correctly, only the last 2 are on the list, are in the Shulchan Aruch. Yeah?
Is this saras
There,
the
not so
same
much.
saras?
Sorry?
Sorry, is this saras the same saras as
No,
for
not the biblical tzaras, no.
okay.
It's called tzaras because it's also skin discoloration, but not because of the biblical tzaras, no.
Okay.
Yeah? Amir, where are you?
You know,
What do we miss?
yeah,
You see the list, yeah?
where man,
Before we get to the words in the Gemara.
at the eggshells, stepping on the eggshells is the bad.
Yeah, and then
invites
the
tzaras.
clothing has been washed in the last 8 days.
Oh, okay, right.
Right?
That I remember, yeah.
So those 2 things were actually mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch, but the rest of the list wasn't, and I'm not sure why only these 2 were mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch. Okay, now we're on the last line that's narrow. Amar Papa. This is interesting. And rather practical too. But again, I don't remember this part being mentioned in the Shulchan Aruch. You have the place there, Mayor?
Yeah, right here.
Amar Papa says, Besa de Ispa Shunra, a house that has a cat, Loy Noyobe Inish, a person should not walk around, Beloy Misani without shoes. So if there's a cat in the house, you got to wear shoes. My time, what's the reason? Mishum, because The shunra, the cat, kotul chivia, kills and eats snakes, kills snakes, v'achale, and eats the snakes. The ispe bechiyavi, and there are within the snake, gemiri katini, small bones, which the cat doesn't eat and leaves it on the floor. Now, if you walk around barefoot, v'yosivle, grama techivria akare, and if the little bones end up in your foot, because you're walking around barefoot, loinofik, they will not come out. The istikanle, and they are dangerous for you. So therefore, if there's a cat in the house, there might be a little leftover bones from the snakes that the cat ate, and therefore, don't walk around that house barefoot.
You won't be able to get those bones out if you.
You won't be able to get the bones out of your body, and that's dangerous. Ikada Amri, there are those who understand who relay the words of Rav Papa actually in the reverse. So this is one variant on the statement of Rav Papa, right? Remember, we're sitting around the study hall, people are discussing all the statements about safety, and someone says, "Oh, I heard Rav Papa said this," and someone else says, "No, I heard it this way," right? So Ikada Amri, others say another variant on how Rav Papa said it, namely, Beisa the Leis Shunra, a house that does not have a cat, Loinoil Be Inish, a person shouldn't walk around the house without Bahakara, shouldn't walk around the house barefoot. So the first variant was, if there is a cat, make sure you got your shoes on, because it might be leftover bones. The other variant is, if there's no cat, make sure you get your shoes on. Why? My time, what's the reason? Dilma Michrech Be'chavia. Maybe a snake will come around your feet. V'layada, you won't know, mistaken, and you get in danger. So if there's no cat, so there's nothing to get rid of the snakes, now you're in danger of snakes. So one version is, if you have cats, you're in danger of the leftover bones from the snakes that the cat ate. The other version is, if there is a cat, if there isn't a cat, then you're in danger of the actual snakes. And that's when you should wear your shoes. We could safely conclude both. Make sure you're wearing your shoes. Now,
Yeah, for both reasons.
for both reasons, right? They're both rational.
They're not mutually exclusive.
They're not mutually exclusive. It's just a question of which one Rav Papa said. Right? Now, I don't think Rav Papa's statement applies today because none of us have snakes, thank God, going roaming around our house. But if you had a house / hut out in Babylonia, you might have snakes in your house.
Right.
Right?
And cats today eat meow mix. They don't eat.
And they eat meow mix, that's right. Well, not so long ago, they were eating mice in your house.
Right.
But it all depends on where you lived.
And it was common in the Mishnaic times to have house pets.
Till like probably about 100 years ago, even less, everybody had indoor pets, especially cats, to get rid of mice in European countries and rats, and to get rid of snakes in Babylonian Middle Eastern countries. Right? People had them for sure.
Right. Wow.
It's like part of housekeeping.
Right.
You got to have a cat around the house. Right? The reason why Israel now is full of cats is because they imported cats to get rid of a mice problem.
Right. Exactly.
So instead of a mice problem, they had a cat problem.
Right.
The story goes, I don't know if it's true or not true, but the story goes, sorry?
That's what I heard also.
The story goes that they delivered, I don't know if this is true or not, or if this is total fable legend, that they delivered the male cats to the north and the female cats to the south, but the delivery got mixed up and the males and females were all over the place, and therefore the place is covered in cats. I don't know how true this fable is, but it's a funny fable. But yeah, it was relevant to them. Sorry?
What about dogs?
People used to have dogs to
Hunting, fetching, whatever.
Hunting, fetching for sure, if that was your profession, if that where you lived. But noblemen used to have dogs as part of like their nobility. They would walk around with big dogs as a way of like showing off. And people would have dogs to guard their house. Security. Have dogs. Until today, people have. Right. So I don't know if this applies today because we don't have, hopefully, no mice and certainly no snakes roaming around our houses.
When we encountered the dogs in the Gemara a few weeks ago.
Not to walk between two dogs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the danger.
Yeah. Now, nonetheless, having said that, when I grew up, my mother always made sure I wore shoes or something, slippers in the house. And she would say, going barefoot is for mourners. It's kind of similar to not pouring backwards of the bottle because that's what you do. So that's what my mother would tell us, not to go around the house barefoot. Okay. Okay, we'll continue, God willing, tomorrow. And the Gemara is going to get back to some more pieces of advice that sages have given to other sages, like previous generation, like we had before. We had Rabbi Kiva to his children, Rabbi Kiva to Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. We had who was it? Rabbi Nasi to his children, right? So now we're going to have some more of these things where sages are giving advice to other sages that I guess
Rav
are younger
Papa,
than them.
I think Rav Papa from Rabbi Yehuda.
Oh, now Papa was cited in the story of Rabbi Huda.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. We spoke about that story last night also, that incident.
Yesterday.
Sorry?
I think that was yesterday, no?
Yeah, no, I'm saying
You
last night
mentioned-
at the class, we mentioned that as well, because it
Oh,
came
at
in
the
the earlier
class.
context
Okay.
as well. Okay. Have a wonderful day, Eden. God willing, more tomorrow.
Thank you. Thank you, Rabbi. Have a good day.
You do.
Take care, Mayor.